How's it going, everyone? Titanok here, and today I'm going to show you how to build a custom YouTube Live component for your website using HTML, CSS, TypeScript, and React. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So to start, you will want to create a React app if you haven't already. To do that, you're just going to run this command, npx create React app. You can name the project whatever you want. For me, I'm going to call it Demo YouTube Live, and then you're going to want to make sure the template is TypeScript. Once this has completed installing, then you're going to want to go ahead and install the Axios library, as this is what we're going to use to make our call to the YouTube API. So you can go ahead and install this, and then we can start building our component. So you'll see that inside of my Create React App project, I have already done a little bit of cleanup for some files that we don't need and added some files that we will need eventually. First thing you'll see is I added a .env file, and then I modified the index and the app files to only include what I need them to include for this tutorial. So you can see here, just the index.tsx, we'll just need to make sure it still renders app. You don't need to report the web vitals or anything. App is just, we're gonna go ahead and reset that to just return right now an empty component, and app.css is empty. Then you also see I created two folders, models and services. We will address those later on in this video. So first though, for the styling, what we're going to do, we're going to implement that first. And for this, we're going to implement an animation for the project. So we can go ahead and do a live animation. And this is going to be at 0%. I want this to be the color white. At 50%. I want this to be the color red. And at 100%. I want this to go back to white. So this might be a little confusing what we're going to do now, but essentially we're going to animate the icon or the display that says that the channel is live. We're going to display that by having it be a little bit of a blinking animation where it'll go white to red, back to white, and just be an infinite loop. So in order to do that, we need to then create a custom CSS class. We can just call it YouTube Live, and we can call it animation, which will be live animation. We'll have this run for 3 seconds. It'll be linear and it will be infinite. Then the next thing we can do is we can just pass in some other things. We can have the font family be Arial, the text align, we can just have this be center, and we can go ahead and leave it like that for now. Then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a wrapper around the entire thing where I'm going to have this just be a black background. I'm just going to set this to be background black, and then I'm gonna have this have a height of 40 VH, and that reminds me, let me add some padding to the top. That way it is really clear and obvious what this is doing. So here we go. This is all the styling you will need for a flashing component. Again, you can change this to fit your project. So back here in our app component, you will see that I have already added some code to go ahead and speed up the process, as it does get a little boring, but you want to make sure you import useState and useEffect from React. Then you want to create a Boolean state variable. We can call it isLive and set isLive with the default value of false. We're going to have an empty useEffect here that we're going to revisit here in just a few moments. And then just for returning, we're going to want to return a conditional rendering for 2 blocks. We're going to say if we are not live, then we're just going to want to render a heading with not live. And if we are, then that's when we can render all of our CSS with a container. And then we can just say bullet point live, just that way it looks a little bit nicer for the UI. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and start figuring out how we're going to find out how we are live. So before proceeding any further, you will want to make sure that you have yourself a YouTube Data API v3 API key. If you don't know how to do this, I will put a video to a card in the top right corner, and that will explain the process of how to get an API key. So once you've gone ahead and done this, then you can go ahead and return to the code, but let's go ahead and continue. One other thing I forgot to mention is that when you get your API key, you will want to make sure that you put it inside of a .env file in your project. So you just want to make sure you call it react_app_API_key, all capitals, and you can just put your key there, and it will go ahead and take care of the rest for you. React will automatically load this in, so you don't need to install .env or any other environment dependency. So the way that we can find out once you have your key created, you can go ahead and go into either Insomnia or Postman just to see the kind of data you can expect to receive. So we're going to use the YouTube search endpoint here. As you can see that I have this set up here in my Insomnia, and we're going to want to make sure we pass in the following parameters with our part, which will be always be snippet, our key, which will be your API key, our query, which is going to be Wildcat, for this case is I found out he was live, and then the type, which will be channel. Then you can go on and scroll down, and you will notice here that in the response that you get within the list, you will be able to find out if a channel is live, if the live broadcast content is set to live. So once you go ahead and done that, we can then use this information to build our code. So now back here inside of VS Code, we can go ahead and start building our models for this, which in other words will be our custom types. So you'll see here in the models folder, I've just gone ahead and created a search snippet and a search response, as those are the two types that are going to be in the API request. I've gone ahead and I've attached them here to my clipboard, just that way we can speed up the process, as these can be rather long. Instead of just typing it all out, that way I can just speed it up for you. I will leave these on screen here so you can copy and paste them into your project, but essentially the search snippet is going to be a sub object within the search response. So we can go ahead and use that to go ahead and get the API data. So now we can go ahead and build our service. So now hopping back in here, I've gone ahead and created a new file called YouTube service inside of the services folder. So I've gone ahead and put some skeleton code in here, which is just going to be that we're going to just import axios and import our search response custom model, create an axios service instance, and then have a base URL for the YouTube API endpoint. Then I'm just going to create a simple function here called checkIsLive, and I'm going to export that within a YouTube service object. That way, if you want to add in any other YouTube API calls, you can go ahead and do that. So in terms of our actual function, we're going to want to make sure that we do the following. We're going to want to make sure we get our response and we can actually validate that we are live. So we can say const response equals await axios service dot get, and then we can just go ahead and wrap angle brackets here, our search response, and then we can go inside here, and this is going to be our base URL as the first part. And then this will also then be our search. And then now we're going to need to make sure we pass in some parameters to this. So we can say params. These are going to be the API params. So we can say part, which is going to be snippet. We can say the key, which is going to be the process.environment.react app API key. Our query is going to be your channel name here, and then the type is we're going to want to make sure that this is listed as channel. So you can see here that these are all the params that we're going to need. And then lastly, to make sure we actually got some data, we're going to go down here and say if response.data.items, just to make sure that it is defined, and then we can go response.data.items.length and validate that it's greater than 0. And then we can go ahead and say return response.data.items at index 0 dot snippet dot live broadcast content is equal to live. Now this will go ahead and take care of everything for us. This will return true if it detects that the top result, which should always be our channel, is live. And if we are not live, then it will go ahead and return false, indicating that, well, we are not live. So now we can go back into here, and now we can go ahead and change our use effect to do exactly what we want it to do and update our state variable. So we can go ahead and create a const update is live, which will be an async function, which will go ahead and say const is channel live, and we'll set this equal to await YouTube service dot check is live. And now the is channel live is going to go ahead and hold the Boolean value, and we're going to say set is live to is channel live. And then the last thing we just need to do is we just need to make sure the use effect will go ahead and call this function, and everything else is good to go. So now we can go ahead and test it. Just make sure you plug in your channel name here into this part of the API query. So now I've gone ahead and pressed npm start into the terminal, and you can see that if we have found a YouTube channel that is live, this should be the result that we see here. Again, I recommend that you customize this component to be exactly how you need to be for your application. If you want to put this in a nav bar or put this on the center screen, just that way you can go ahead and inform people that you are live. You can go ahead and explore with this and change the styling as you want on your own, but this will go ahead and conclude this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Again, I will put some links in the description to some other videos that I made that will explain how to do some other parts of this tutorial. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe, as well as only a small percentage of my viewers are subscribed. And if you like this, consider subscribing. It is always free, and you can unsubscribe later if you change your mind. And it also always helps me out in the long run. Until then, my name is TitanHawk17, wishing you all a fantastic rest of your day, wherever you may be.